Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Of course, here in New Zealand, it's about 4 o'clock p.m. So it's in the afternoon. The sun is shining, which is great since we've been having a lot of rain showers for the past few weeks. And of course, some I believe are in from the Philippines. I think Anna is, and some other countries. So hello and welcome to the preview of the Gamification Bootcamp, where we fast track your way to engagement design. My name is Jam Mayer. On behalf of Conversology, I will be your moderator for today's session. Now, of course, we have Natalie Denmead and Chris Blackburn today. Natalie's specialist areas are Moodle Learning Management Systems, mobile computing, web technologies, Google Apps, and indigenous perspectives. She's currently managing 2 national vocational education and training, or VET, strategy-funded projects where gamification elements are used to motivate disengaged learners. Chris, on the other hand, of course, developer extraordinaire, has been making awesome video games for 20 years for the likes of Ubisoft Montreal, Lionhead Studios, BioWare, and EA. His first hit, Skidmark, sparked a sensation on the Amiga home computer in 1993. Now he returns to indie game development to build games from scratch for real gamers. Of course, we do expect some webinar first-timers. I will just go through a very short orientation so that you can engage with us during the session. Definitely when you enter the room, you will see that there is a control panel. You will see some boxes there are panels, and of course, some buttons that you will be able to use. Now, what's important, of course, is can you hear us, or will you be able to hear our speakers? That's very important. So you can attend the webinar through an iPad or smartphone. In order to make sure you can hear us, of course, just go to the upper right hand of your iPad, for example, and make sure you connect to audio using mic and speakers. For a PC, you will see a window that says audio and click on settings, and you will definitely will be able to choose the headset or the speakers that you are using, of course, and just click on play sound. If you see green light going back and forth, and you can adjust the volume, there you're good to go. For Mac, of course, it's a little bit different. Just click on go to meeting or go to webinar, make sure it's in the foreground, click on audio, and of course, you can choose the microphone or the headset speakers that you're using. Please engage with us. We do have that questions box that you can type in if you encounter any technical difficulties. We are here to help you out. There are some buttons, of course, to maximize the presentation. Just click on that square box over there. You can raise your virtual hand. We won't be able to see your hands being raised at the moment, but we will definitely see your virtual hand being raised with that green arrow over there. Once you click on that, and that will turn into red, that means your hand is raised. And lastly, of course, the mute button. Everyone is on mute, but hey, we would love to hear your voice as well. So just raise your hand and we will definitely open that up for you. Now, lastly, I know you guys want to hear the speakers, not me, but just to make sure you have a smoother online experience, please no downloading, or please stop any video sharing sites. If you're streaming anything, close your chat windows or multiple browser windows. And of course, if you're using a wireless connection, it's still best that you can connect through a LAN cable or any program that affects your bandwidth, internet bandwidth. Please, if you could disable it during the session. We are on Twitterland, and you can join us if you have a Twitter ID or profile. Our hashtag for today is, of course, gamification, and I'll be monitoring that as well. So without further ado, I would like to turn you over to Natalie first. Natalie, hello, and how's Australia today?
It's a lovely sunny day in Australia. I'm on the north coast, a few hours north of Sydney, the north coast of New South Wales. So thank you for coming along, everybody. So my name's Natalie Denmead, and these are my 2 little children that you can see in the picture. I work for TAFE New South Wales and also do freelance instructional design and e-learning course development. And I'm interested in gamification because it will hopefully keep my students awake and from stop them from disengaging and quitting. They're my objectives in trying to get into this train of thought. So the title of my presentation is Light Up Your Hippocampus. And the hippocampus is a part of the brain that is used whenever you're committing something to long-term memory. That part of the brain, which is pictured in this diagram, is highly active. And if you'd like to hear a very engaging presentation from Jane McGonigal, there's a YouTube reference here where she speaks about how different parts of our brain are involved in rewards and motivation, and that's often associated with gamification. But in the studies of when people are actually playing games, they're seeing that it does change their behaviour, and as educators that is our long-term goal. So I was intrigued as to how we could apply this in the education setting. They also speak about the positive emotions that are associated with playing a game, and it's very rare to get all of these emotions when you hand somebody a test or an exam. The stress levels increase before and during, and it's really sad as a teacher to see the effect that it's having. And I would much rather see my students enjoying the process, including the assessment process. One of the key features that I think is missing in a lot of our e-learning resources is levelling it up, which is very successful in games and not used as much in education. Having been a student myself over the last few months doing some MOOCs where I met some of these amazing people in this seminar today, one of the questions that's in my mind all the time is, are we there yet? Have we finished? What do I have to do? So as an e-learning student, when you commence a course and look at the materials, do you see that the goal is very hard to reach, or is it more like these nice rolling hills? And as Hubert very succinctly put, big goals lead to fear, restricting access to cortex, hence failure. Small goals empower, engage cortex, and produce success. Another quote from Jane McGonigal is, what do games have in common? There are so many different types of games, and she speaks about 4 key points that I'm going to use as a framework to compare e-learning to games. And those 4 points are a goal, rules, a feedback system, and voluntary participation. If you think of any games that you've ever played, you may be able to start breaking down how those 4 things work in each game. I'm not much of a gamer myself, I'll say up front, but I've been around many people who are into games, and there certainly is a wide variety out there. In a game like Tetris, you don't even have to win. It's more about beating your own score, so that's quite different to a traditional game, yet it's been one of the most successful games out there. And can you apply that framework outside of games? If you think of LinkedIn, a professional online resume discussion forum, it does use these principles where there is a goal, rules, feedback, and voluntary participation, and yet it's not condescending, it's not childish, and it's not game-like, but it does use gamification elements. That's what I would like to see happen in our e-learning courses, is that we can provide, in a professional way, supply these same gamification elements. So you think about a game has small goals, clear objectives, quick feedback, voluntary. Let's put that into an e-learning environment. When I did my degree by distance education in 1995, I was not given any of those things. I was given quite the opposite, and yet I was one of the lucky few who could get through and survive. And I really wonder within a year or two what our learning management systems will look like, whether they might be moving away from these traditional distance education models that we've mimicked in the digital environment instead of really using the digital environment for what it can be. So I'd like to get a bit more practical instead of just talking about the concepts of gamification. The learning management system that I'm most familiar with is called Moodle, which is one of the world's most popular learning management systems. And if you start thinking about an online course, perhaps we wanted to teach somebody how to pour a beer, the questions, if you opened up this course, would it be really clear to the learner what the goal is? would it be clear to them when these elements are due and how they have to submit the work and any other boundaries and restraints that we're putting around them? Do we give them feedback? The learner will be wondering, have I done enough? Am I finished yet? Did I pass? And are we giving them voluntary pathways within the course? And in the hour-and-a-half version of this seminar, what I'll do is I'll map that back to the actual elements within Moodle that can provide these features. Some of them are core Moodle and some of them are plugins. I've also produced a poster that breaks down each one of those tools and ties it into gamification frameworks. And that will be released in 2 weeks' time during the next seminar. After speaking about how wonderful games are, I would like to take a more critical point of view about what some of the pitfalls are, that simply giving people rewards in the form of virtual goods or badges can actually undermine the whole process. And we talk about Gabe Zickerman's model where he says status, access, power and stuff should be used in this order, but it's really the higher level status, access and power that will be more powerful in motivating people. So we look at how Moodle can move up to those more effective measures. And I'm going to have to just quickly jump through these next slides because it's a bit of a preview rather than the whole thing. We're going to have quite an in-depth discussion about intrinsic motivation. We'll define what it is and then look at how extrinsic rewards and intrinsic are working together. It's not one or the other. You really use one to achieve another. And if anybody's interested in getting more technical, I have been exploring with some different ways of using e-learning tools, moving beyond SCORM into the Tin Can API. And I can see that's going to be really useful in the gamification world, but that's a fairly technical discussion that I won't tap into at the moment. As instructional designers or e-learning content developers, what we're really aiming for is for our learners to be totally absorbed in what we're doing and enjoying it. And I doubt whether we could ever really match the same pure joy that people get from games, but I hope that we could get closer to this flow theory, as it's called. And our students will be sitting in the classroom looking like this. When we hand them an assessment, this will be the look on their face. So please join in the discussions. A lot of this is experimental. Moodle 2.5, which is about to be released, is releasing a new feature of providing badges based on conditions. So it's going to be a real turnaround that people will be very much interested in how to apply this new feature that's about to be released. So join our LinkedIn group on Moodle for Motivation, and my contact details are there if you would if you have any questions or ideas. We're trying to just collate people's ideas at the moment, so if you have any input, please join the discussion with us. And I do have a request. I'm doing some research at the moment, so if Jam could just paste a link. There's a quick survey I'd like you to contribute your opinion as to what type of a player you think you might be according to Bartle's player types, and then tell me what assessments work for you and which ones make you groan and quit. So please take a few minutes to do that. I'll stop this this presentation and see if there's any questions or discussions or comments from anybody that's listening.
Okay, thanks, Natalie. If you could actually don't remove the presentation, I should say. If you could just go to probably the first or second slide that you have. The first question is, just for those in the audience that, they're not familiar with the player types, the achiever, explorer, etc. Could you just give us a little bit of, you briefly discuss each probably, or if you have a favorite of them all in connection to, of course, instructional design or in e-learning or training?
Yeah, the player types, there's 4 key ones, or you can expand it to an 8 model to be more complex, and it's originally based on a paper by Bartle where he looked at people playing mud games like Dungeons and Dragons and multiplayer online games a long time ago. And we're really wondering if it's got any relevance in today's world and frameworks outside of what he originally did the survey and his opinions on. But as a teacher who's dealt with different groups of students coming in over the years, I certainly see that there's a group dynamic that goes on, and it's very hard for me as a teacher to quickly get to know everybody in the room and figure out what works for this person and what works for that person. So any framework that helps me step outside of my own frame of reference and what I like to understand what motivates other people is a useful tool for me. So I've broken down the poster that I've developed to achievers who like to win, as opposed to a killer who likes to win but likes to beat you while they're winning. So the difference there is that the killer really likes the social atmosphere of being with other people and winning, whereas an achiever would probably be happy just to get points and rewards on their own, and they're not as interested in the interaction side. The other two types are kind of similar in that the explorer and the socializer are both less motivated by points and rewards, but the socializer needs to interact, needs a social element, whereas the explorer is happily independent, creative type person who needs an interesting environment to keep them challenged and doesn't want one path to go down. So they're four very different people. And when we're giving people learning activities and assessment activities, what motivates one is not going to motivate another. So as a teacher, I'd be wanting to give a diverse range of assessment choices so each person could choose one that would really bring out the best in them.
Okay. All right. Well, before we move on to Chris, of course, I would like to go back to the audience, and if you have any comments or questions about what Natalie has shown us, obviously this is just a preview of what 15 and 16, the main event, but this is your chance to actually ask your questions. So Natalie, would you be able to just show probably, I think it was the second slide that you have? Yep. So we're waiting from insatiable expectation. One, Natalie, sorry. Yep. So guys, if you have any questions, there, actually, the I love that picture. I love that slide. So with this slide, Natalie, maybe you can again explain a little bit more. Is this one of the objectives, again on a training perspective, of course? Is this the picture of what you would like your learners to have in your classroom, for example? Literally, or?
Well, Chris is the one to expand on this more, being a successful game designer. But what surprised me when I started learning about game design is that people are willing to fail in games. Up to 80% of the time, they will just keep clicking and trying and exploring and failing, and it doesn't seem to put them off. So the theory behind it is that you need to have a balance of a ratio of negative to positive emotions, and it's okay to have the negative and the fail emotions in there, and it gives the positive emotions more power, because after you've tried for something time after time and then you finally get it, that's why you get the positive emotion. So in e-learning, what the trainers thought that took me down is that in e-learning people do fail, but we usually give them one big gigantic fail like a train crash. And what we need to give them is lots of little tiny failures mixed with lots of tiny positive experiences, which is a bit like the leveling it up process I was talking about before, but it's really thinking about what emotions your learners are going through. And the Khan Academy has been very successful in using videos for e-learning, and one of the early interviews with the designer and his cousins, the feedback he got from them was, we like watching you on video better than we like you teaching us face to face, because we can fail alone when we're watching a video. If we don't get it right, we can stop and pause and rewind, and we're not embarrassed by our failure to understand something. So trying to give our learners the opportunity to fail privately is another thing I'm trying to put into practice.
Okay, and I was actually thinking, and Chris is raising his hand, and I will unmute Chris. Chris, let's do it now. Any thoughts on this, of course, positive emotions and this picture, this slide?
Yeah, hi, Chris here. I just wanted to add there's a real distinction between the positive and the negative emotion, and there's a great example of that. If you imagine a game of hopscotch, where you jump along the squares on the ground and it's nice and simple. Now get that game of hopscotch, but raise it up a foot, so it's now a foot off the ground. And now you're going to jump across that hopscotch board, and if you fall off, I mean, it's a foot, feels bad, but you get to the end and you've got a much greater sense of accomplishment. Now imagine raising that hopscotch board and put it on top of a mountaintop. So if you fall off the edge of that hopscotch, it's some pretty serious damage you're going to do there. And the sense of joy and success that you're going to feel completing that hopscotch game on the top of that mountaintop is so much higher than anything you could do down on the ground, simply because the ratio of the risk versus reward is so much higher there. Even though the achievement of beating that hopscotch is no greater at that level, it's the difference between the risk and the reward there which really makes the payoff so much higher for the player.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, we will hear more from him, of course, in a few minutes. So, Natalie, before we transfer presenter rights, of course, to Chris, anything that you'd like to add or like a little takeaway for the audience, what to expect on May 15 for your, of course, your webcast during the gamification bootcamp?
Yeah, in the longer session, I'll be giving examples of each one of these points and showing you an online course where these features have been put into practice. Some of them are core Moodle features and others are the plugins that are customized Moodle. So you will get a chance to see real courses and you'll have the enrollment so that you can actually try out and interact with the Moodle course. So it'll be quite inspiring about design. I will also offer you a range of tools because we don't always have the time as teachers to put into it what we'd like. So I'll be giving you some quick and dirty tricks instead of the more complicated ones. And of course the poster will be released, so you'll be able to get a quick reference guide. It's loosely based on Joyce's original Moodle 2 tool guide. It's a similar layout, but it's using the Moodle for Motivation types, which I think is going to be quite useful to educators. So well worth coming along and hearing more about it, and it will be more conversational. So you're welcome to ask questions and we'll be brainstorming and doing activities together to make all of this memorable for you. So thank you for your time and listening.
Thank you, Natalie, and don't go away, of course. We will definitely have another Q&A session towards the end before, of course, we close the webcast. And just FYI, while I move presenter rights to Chris, I did send you one question from Tom, and we can do that after Chris's presentation. So we can chat in the background while Chris presents.
Oh no, okay. I want to listen. I'm very interested in this.
Okay, all right. So, Chris, whenever you're ready, and your mic is actually open.
Hi. So I must apologize first off. I'm on an extremely slow internet connection here, so I might just have to pause every now and then to make sure the conversation is coming through. So hopefully you can see my screen.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm out in the middle of nowhere, up in Northland in New Zealand. So yeah, let's jump. So I'm going to be talking from a game design background. How do we keep our players coming back? If we keep our players coming back, then obviously we can. Well, we want more stronger attention so that they keep coming back to the thing that we're trying to encourage them to do. So who am I? I've been a corporate game developer. This is me being a corporate game developer. Worked for the likes of Electronic Arts on Mass Effect, Ubisoft on Rainbow Six and Watch Dogs, and Lionhead as well on a game called Black and White 2. So that was before. This is me now. I'm a lot more relaxed. I've got my neighbor's sheep. I'm working for Modka Games, which is me and another guy, and we've got our game Scooter Boy coming out real soon now. So I'm going to be talking a bit about game design from mainly for free-to-play games. And I want to talk about the ARM process, the acquire, retain, monetize. So the idea here is you need to get a player in, you need to acquire them, and then once you have that player playing your game, then you can retain that player, get them to come back, and then ultimately the idea is you want to monetize that player in a free-to-play model. So the idea here is you need to acquire them before you can retain them, before you can get them to coming back, and you need to get them coming back before you can monetize them. So obviously if you're in a learning environment, just substitute learning for monetize, or if it's motivation, or regardless of what your process is. Mainly I just wanted to focus on the retain aspect of acquire, retain, and monetize. But in the full presentation, we'll go into a bit more detail of these different steps and how you ensure that you're doing the best you can in each one of these areas. So then we're going to go on and talk about how engaged your players are. So you might have heard the term daily average users or monthly average users. So we're going to drill into what these numbers actually mean and how you can design your game around different types of players. So players who are logging on every single day require different features from players who are only logging in once a month. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to design features for those different types of users. We're going to talk about how your users transition between these different types of players, and then we're going to look at different ways that you can analyze your metrics to determine where your players are and what you want them to be doing, and how best to monetize them, or how best to provide them learning opportunities. So I'm actually also going to talk about Bartle theory. So I really like Bartle theory. It's a theory of player motivation. One of the great things about it is it's really simple to remember. It's an empirical theory, so it's actually developed by gamers observing other gamers. So rather than a theory that's just kind of came up with someone sitting in a room and thinking by themselves, this is developed by people actually watching what other people really do. One of the great things about Bartle theory is it's really powerful for analyzing existing games. If you look at really successful games out there, you'll see that they often have, or they almost always have, strong features for each different type of Bartle theory player. And it's great for predicting room for improvement. So you can use the Bartle theory to look at your particular game or your particular system and find ways to improve it, find things that you're missing. And all these sum up to a really useful theory, something that you can apply in many different ways. So what is the Bartle theory? Now, we'll go into a lot more detail on this in the actual talk, but I like to split them into 4 different categories. Now, the idea here is each player has a mixture of these 4 different stereotypes. Each player has aspects of these 4. However, if we think of a stereotypical player that just wants one of each of these type of things, then oftentimes if we put features in for the stereotypes, we'll end up putting features in that satisfy real players. So it's a simplification by considering that there are players who only want each one of these things. So in the main presentation, we'll go into a lot more detail. So take, for example, the clubs, which are traditionally considered the killers. So the clubs, really what they want is they want to dominate. They want to be aggressors. So they want to beat things, and be that other players or be that the environment. The clubs are really out to dominate and to beat. If you might consider this quite similar to testosterone. So if you consider the chess players who have incredibly high levels of testosterone in their system, the chess players there are trying to dominate the board. They're trying to beat their opponent. That's kind of a classic clubs type of player. The hearts are really important. They're the socializers. So what's really important for the hearts is to be able to talk to other players who are also playing your game and communicate with them, and they get a lot of their enjoyment by playing with the other players. Now, one aspect that's really important about the hearts in your game is they really care a lot about making sure everyone's having a good time. So it's really important to have features that support the hearts in your game to make sure that they can play with all the other players, and they'll make sure everyone is getting along, and then your whole system as a whole starts to run a whole lot better, simply because you've encouraged the hearts to stick around and enjoy your game. Similarly, we can look at the spades and the diamonds, and we'll go into a lot more detail in the actual presentation and talk about the kind of things that the spades and the diamonds. As just one hint, the spades really like some hidden knowledge. So for example, there's a link down the bottom here where you can find some additional information. That's something that spades really enjoy, and it's the kind of feature you need to put into your system to make sure that you have features for the spades. So in the big presentation, what we're going to spend most of the time is, how do we combine these two theories? So we have this Bartle theory about what players enjoy, the stereotypical players, and then we know empirically that players have daily usage patterns or monthly usage patterns. So we're going to look at some examples of features you're probably really familiar with, like a leaderboard or badges or achievements. And we're going to look at how we can make these features appeal to the different stereotypical players, and also appeal to different players who have different play patterns, which is we're going to dig into some detail there and show how we can combine these two theories to really make strong predictions about how to improve our gamification systems. So that's pretty much the précis of the big talk. If there's any questions here, I might just bounce the screen over to Jay.
There you go. See. Okay. So for the audience, of course, please, if you have any questions, please don't be shy. I know we do have someone from a gaming company who's here right now. I believe they're from Level Up Games. And Anna, I'm sure you have some questions. If you're with your team, we would appreciate it if you could raise your hand. We can open your mic. Or if you have any questions, please type it in. So, Chris, before I move on to Natalie, because Tom actually had a question earlier. Overall, I mean, apart from the player types, is there anything else that they should expect on May 15 or 16 during your session, of course, during the boot camp? Anything else that you can probably let them know, give them more information?
Yeah, definitely. So if there's enough time in the presentation, I wanted to talk a little bit about the reward schedule as well. So how do we give rewards to players in a way that maximizes their attention, so that keeps them coming back? And you might think it's a simple thing, like every morning we give them another reward, but it turns out there's a few more psychological techniques we can use to keep the players coming back, but by using the reward schedule. Also going to talk a little bit about things you shouldn't do, like taking stuff away from players, and some of the consequences that can come if you do that, or if you choose to make those kind of choices, or if players are taking stuff away from other players. So we might talk a little bit about that too.
Perfect. Okay. Welcome, Brian. I think we're almost actually done for today. I'm hoping that there are more questions from the audience. Amita, with regards to the copy of the recording of this session, we will upload this on our website. Since you've registered for the preview, we will definitely send you an email. And you can play that as many times as possible, of course. So if anyone's interested. Natalie. Okay, Tom, did you see the Tom's question? I actually sent it over to your chat.
And
yeah.
And yes, they're certainly not mutually exclusive. When you do there's an online test you can do, and it will say that you're like 60% socializer, 40% explorer, and 10% killer. So within yourself, you will you will belong to multiple categories, and then there's certainly, you're not set one for life, and you'll be that. It's a role that you play in a given circumstance. at a certain point in time, and you're capable of playing different roles in different circumstances. So that's definitely true.
Okay. All right. Anna, I'm actually hoping that Anna would ask a question, because if there are no more questions at all from the audience, then we will end early, because our speakers are very busy. We're actually very, very grateful and thankful, Natalie and Chris, for taking the time, considering it's Anzac Day today. It's a holiday for us.
It is. Lots of people are relaxing, enjoying this lovely weather, hopefully outside getting some sunshine. I enjoyed your presentation, Chris. Thanks for that. I'll look forward to hearing the longer version.
Oh, thank you. Thanks both for having us both here. It's been really awesome.
All right, we will then end early. We have our audience is pretty quiet. I was going to ask you guys is what category are they going to be in? How do we actually try to engage them into the session? But if you'd like to do that before we close.
Yeah, I find it interesting because there are deeper theories of motivation that you can find out there, and I've used a few in the past. And the great thing about the Bartle theory is that it's so easy to apply, and it's so useful that oftentimes if you use the Bartle theory and you get stuck, then it's useful to go to a deeper theory. But oftentimes you don't actually end up needing to go that far. So that's. I mean, there are deeper theories out there that exist, but I find the Bartle theory to be the most useful one.
Natalie, any thoughts?
Well, it's something that I'm fairly new to and I'm just beginning to explore with, so I'm really interested to talk to Chris more about this. And if you can come along to my live one and we could have a cross conversation, I think it would be great, because I'm a socializer and find it really hard to do monologues. What I notice in the classroom is that people are just so different, and you don't know when someone just walks in the room what sort of person they are. So it's hard. You know when you get it right, but you don't know when you're getting it wrong. And I do think that students fall into one of those stereotypical categories fairly easily if I think back to all of the students that I've known. And I just love that moment when you finally find something that works with that student who hasn't responded to anything else.
Yeah, definitely. Can you still see my screen?
Yep.
Yes, I can.
Yeah. What tends to happen when we're making games is we tend to make most of the game for the clubs. They tend to be the most dominant player, and they tend to be the most common player, the most frequent you find out there. And then what happens is we turn our attention to the socializers, the hearts. And the reason is it's because the socializers make sure that all the players playing together are having a good time. So these are kind of the two that we focus on the most, the clubs and then the hearts. Then the next one we add in is the diamonds. That's the collections and the achievements, and to an extent the leaderboards too. And that's because this tends to be the second most common trait that we see out there, the diamonds. And then lastly what we do is we mix in a little bit of content for the spades. But they tend to not be too much. This is probably closer to about 10% of the population out there. So that's kind of the direction we go. We start with the clubs, then we go the hearts because they're the glue. They make everything stick together. Then we add features in for the diamonds, and then lastly a few optional bits for the spades.
That's really useful to know for my designing too. And when I did read deeper about Bartle's theories, what I noticed was the diagrams where they show that people will progress in certain predictable pathways. So you might start a game as a club, but then at some point in time you'll change the role that you play. And I see that happening in classrooms when the group dynamic first forms. People will tend to sit back and act in the group in a certain way, but then a few months down the line, obviously they've changed, you've changed, and as a teacher I see my role is to escort them through these roles and expand their own repertoire of what they're comfortable in, and I can do that by the way I design my learning resources.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, we see that too.
Yep, okay. Well, again, thank you guys for taking the time for today's preview. Now, to our audience, and Anna, of course, is saying that from Level Up Games that they are looking forward to the recording. We will definitely email you that. But what we would like to do is to invite everyone who is in the room, and we hope that your colleagues, or if you have anyone from your network who could benefit from these sessions, I am actually going to send the link. This is for Natalie's session for in the boot camp, and I will be sending the one for Chris. So if you guys are interested, of course, please join us at the boot camp. That's May 15 and 16. We do have the schedule posted on the pages and other information, but if you have any further like clarifications, etc., like time zones, I know it's available around the world, and I get a lot of emails asking, you know, what time it is. So we do have that link on the page as well, and you can check on what country you're in, and it will tell you what date it is, so you don't miss it at all. So let me just double check again. You're welcome, of course. And again, on behalf of Conversology, my name is Jam Mayer. Thank you for joining us for this preview. Please go as well to facebook.com/Conversology, and we do have our event page there to get updated and see you all there. Thank you.